In a quiet town hidden behind morning mist, there lies a mysterious garden, where every word becomes a flower or a thorn. Cherry blossom. Two sisters walk its paths. One speaks with kindness, and roses bloom at her feet. The other, with pride and bitterness, and the ground bleeds with thorns. Rose, new moon. But what happens when the garden starts listening not to their words, but to their hearts? This is a story of love, envy, and the power of what we say, the garden of words. Because sometimes beauty or pain is just a word away. Broken heart tulip. The sun rose like a whispered secret, spilling honey light through the trees that guarded the hidden garden. Every drop of dew shimmered like a memory. Somewhere between the rustle of vines and the hum of unseen bees, Maya knelt, her hands deep in the earth. She wasn't planting, she was speaking. Softly, almost shyly. "Good morning, little ones," she murmured, brushing her thumb across a petal. As her voice floated into the air, the garden stirred. A dozen white daisies stretched their necks toward her, opening as if they had been waiting all night for her words. Each syllable she spoke carried warmth, an invisible pulse that woke the ground beneath her palms. Blossom. Behind her, Lila leaned against a marble arch, the sunlight painting gold on her pale skin. Her white dress fluttered like an angel's robe, but her tone was anything but holy. "You talk to flowers again?" she said with a mocking laugh. "Maybe one day they'll talk back and tell you how silly you sound." The soil beneath her cracked. A small vine turned black, curling inward. Sprouting thorns where once there had been buds. The garden reacted instantly, not to what she said, but how she said it. Maya looked over her shoulder, smiling faintly. "If they did talk back, maybe you'd finally listen." Lila scoffed. "Listen to what? Your fantasies? The world doesn't bloom with kindness, Maya. It grows on power." But even as she said it, a gust of wind moved through the trees like a sigh. A few of the blossoms near her feet shivered and closed. The garden didn't seem to like her words. Maya returned to her work, planting a single rose cutting near the stone bench where their mother used to sit. She could almost hear her mother's voice. "Your words are seeds, my loves. Speak carefully, they grow." She missed that voice. The garden had been their mother's favorite place. Her sanctuary, her storybook come alive. After her death, the twins had inherited it. But where Maya saw a promise, Lila saw a stage. "You still think this place means something, don't you?" Lila said, stepping closer. "You think talking sweetly to petals will change the world." Maya wiped soil from her fingers and stood. Not the world. Just one small corner of it. A silence bloomed between them, heavy, fragile. Then Lila smirked. "You always were good at pretending." The words hit the air like stones, and instantly the roses around her darkened. Thorns rose in response, coiling toward her ankles. Maya gasped. "Stop. You're hurting it." Lila's eyes widened for a second. She hadn't meant to, but pride sealed her lips. She turned away as if it were nothing. When she was gone, Maya knelt again. She placed her hand on the wounded soil, whispering apologies. Slowly, the thorns retracted, but as she leaned down, one last thorn pricked her finger. A drop of blood fell onto a petal, staining it red. She whispered, "Even kindness can bleed." The garden trembled, listening. Evening came like a secret the sky was too tired to keep. Fireflies blinked above the garden path, lighting the way toward the old willow tree. Its roots spread wide like veins of memory, and its branches hung low, brushing the sisters' hair as they stood beneath it. Maya spoke first. "Do you remember what Mom said about this tree?" Lila's gaze stayed fixed on the horizon. "That it listens?" "Yes. I also remember she used to talk to it as if it were alive." "It is alive," Maya said softly. "Every word we speak gets trapped in its roots. That's why it remembers us." Lila laughed, the sound sharp enough to slice through still air. "So, it remembers that you whisper to daisies and I tell the truth?" "No," Maya said. "It remembers that you hurt things you could love." The willow's leaves rustled, though no wind stirred. A low hum rose from the soil, like a sigh or a heartbeat. Lila looked uneasy for the first time. "What was that?" "The garden listening," Maya replied. Lila took a step back. Don't start your fairy tales again. You think these plants care who's kind and who isn't. But the ground seemed to disagree. Light began to pulse faintly at Maya's feet, golden roots spreading outward, twining between her toes. Around Lila, darker tendrils slithered upward, thorned and tense. Stop it, Lila said, her voice breaking slightly. You're doing this. I'm not, Maya whispered. We both are. The willow's bark glowed faintly, and words began to appear, glowing inscriptions, like the tree was writing them in light. Each line shimmered. Kindness blooms. Cruelty burns. Lila stared. Her heart thumped. This is impossible. Maya reached out, her hand trembling. It's not punishment, Lila. It's reflection. For a second, something softened in Lila's eyes. Confusion, fear, maybe even guilt. If that's true, she said slowly, then what happens when we stop speaking altogether? Maya smiled sadly. Then the garden goes silent. And silence is the saddest thing it knows. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain and the faint echo of their mother's laughter. Lila looked around, uncertain whether she was hearing it for real or from memory. I'm not like you, Lila said quietly. I know, Maya answered. But the garden doesn't want us to be the same. It just wants us to remember how to grow. The willow's light dimmed, fading into twilight. Lila turned to leave, whispering, maybe to herself, maybe to the air, we'll see whose words bloom longer. As her footsteps faded, the garden split in two halves, one side glowing with warmth and golden blossoms, the other shadowed with cold thorn vines. That night, under a violet sky, the first silent war began, not with swords, but with words unspoken. The garden slept, but its roots whispered in the dark, carrying every echo, every wound. Hibiscus new moon. The garden's palm mirrored the sky, calm, yet strangely alive. Maya knelt at the edge, tracing the water's surface with her fingers. Every ripple seemed to respond to her touch, carrying the glow of the golden blossoms behind her. Look, Lila, Maya whispered. The water doesn't lie. It shows everything. Lila stood opposite her, arms crossed. She looked into the pond, watching the reflection of herself beside her twin, her pale face, her poised elegance. Yet the reflection seemed different. Shadows lingered, thorns creeping into her mirrored feet. She swallowed. So it's showing me? Yes, Maya said softly. Not who you want to be, who you really are. Your words, your anger, everything leaves a mark. Lila stared, heart pounding. The water shimmered. One small rose floated toward a reflection, golden petals trembling, almost reaching out. Then a vine wrapped around the rose, thorns gripping it. You can't control it, can you? Lila asked, voice small. Maya shook her head. No, you can only choose what you say next. The garden will remember, and so will we. A soft wind moved across the water. Leaves drifted, petals swirled, and the thorns seemed to whisper secrets. Old secrets of envy, pride, and forgotten love. Lila's hands twitched. She wanted to lash out, to mock, but something deeper held her back. For the first time, she truly saw Maya, the kindness, the patience, the gentle strength. And she saw herself, the pride, the sharp words, the bitterness she tried to hide. I don't know if I can be like you, Lila said quietly. Maya's smile was sad, understanding. No one can be like me, Lila. You only have to be better than yesterday. The pond shimmered once more. The reflection of the sisters merged, golden and shadowed, light and dark intertwined. It was the first time the garden showed both sides together, and in that reflection, Lila felt a spark of something new. Respect, maybe even love. The sun dipped low, painting the garden in fiery orange and soft violet. Flowers glowed, thorns pulsed faintly, and the sisters walked back along the stone path, neither speaking, but both listening. The garden had begun to answer, and in its voice they both heard the truth. Words can hurt, words can heal, and the choice is theirs. Morning arrived quietly, but the garden had already begun murmuring in anticipation. Maya knelt on the soft earth, her hands glowing faintly as she planted seeds among the roses. Each word she whispered shaped a petal, a stem, a bloom. "Grow with patience, bloom with love," she murmured. Her words were like a lullaby to the earth, gentle and rhythmic. Tiny sprouts shimmered, almost vibrating with life, as though the soil remembered every syllable spoken here. Seedling. Lila watched from the stone path, arms crossed. Her pride still held her stiff, yet something in her stirred, a quiet unease. The garden seemed alive, listening to every heartbeat, every thought, amplifying their inner worlds. "You think these seeds mean something?" Lila asked, voice sharp. Her words, as always, landed with an edge. A vine twisted toward her boots, thorns glinting faintly, as if echoing the harshness in her tone. Maya didn't flinch. "Every word plants a seed, Lila. Yours grow thorns. Mine grow life." Lila scoffed but watched closely. She had to admit, the contrast was undeniable. Where Maya knelt, petals sparkled in the morning light. Where Lila's shadow fell, the soil darkened, thorn stems creeping upward. The twin sisters moved through the garden, separated by a mere few steps, yet worlds apart. Maya hummed softly, a tune that made blossoms sway. Lila whispered bitterly under her breath, and the garden shivered, responding to her hidden emotions even without intention. For the first time, Lila noticed how powerfully the garden reflected her soul. It was as if every insult, every arrogant thought, left a visible mark. She clenched her fists. "You always think you're better," she muttered. But the garden answered not with punishment, but reflection. The thorns trembled, recoiling slightly from her bitterness, almost pleading with her to reconsider. Maya looked up and met her sister's gaze. "It's not too late, Lila. Every seed can bloom differently if you choose your words carefully." For a long silence, Lila simply stared, torn between pride and curiosity. Could she change? Could her words truly grow flowers instead of thorns? The wind picked up, carrying the scent of jasmine and roses, wrapping around the sisters like a soft reminder. Words are never wasted, and the garden never forgets. As twilight descended, the garden transformed. Golden flowers gleamed faintly under the moon, while thorn vines cast long, ominous shadows. Maya rested her hands near a glowing pond, where petals floated gently atop the water. "Every choice leaves a mark," she whispered to herself, watching the ripples carry her reflection. Lila approached slowly, footsteps hesitant. Her eyes, once sharp and unyielding, now flickered with something new, a shadow of doubt, a hint of regret. The thorns at her feet seemed to pulse in sympathy, stretching toward her but not harming. I didn't realize," Lila began, voice barely audible. She paused, her hands trembling. "I thought words were just words, but I see now." Maya turned, soft smile on her face. "They are seeds, Lila, and every seed grows whether we mean it or not." The pond shimmered. Lila leaned over, staring at her reflection. The shadowed version of herself stared back, pale, proud, surrounded by thorns. Next to it, Maya's reflection glowed golden, petals floating gracefully. "I don't want to be this," Lila whispered. Her voice broke slightly. I want to change." Maya reached her hand across the pond. "Then speak wisely. Let your words grow flowers, not thorns." The water rippled as if echoing Maya's words. Lila's reflection shifted subtly, a small golden glow at her feet, a promise of what could be. The sisters sat in silence, the garden alive around them. Petals swirled in the air, thorns trembled, and the moonlight glinted off leaves like tiny sparks of hope. For the first time, Lila felt the weight of her words, the pain they could sow and the beauty they could create. Maya whispered once more, "It's never too late to plant kindness. Even a single word can change everything." The wind stirred the blossoms, carrying their fragrance across the garden. The twin sisters, one shadowed, one golden, began to understand each other in ways words alone could not convey. The garden pulsed with life, every leaf, every thorn, every petal reflecting the choices of two hearts learning to grow together. Hibiscus new moon, dawn broke across the garden, spilling soft light across dew-kissed petals. Maya walked slowly along the winding path, each step awakening blossoms with a subtle shimmer. She bent to touch a lavender stem, whispering, "Grow gentle, grow strong." The garden responded immediately, petals unfurling, leaves trembling in quiet harmony. It was as if the plants themselves recognized her heart. Lila stood a few paces behind, shadowed by thorn vines, the morning light glinting faintly against their sharp edges. She had tried, briefly, to change her words, but old habits lingered. Her lips trembled. She wanted to speak kindness, yet bitterness hovered like a stubborn shadow. Maya sensed it. "It's okay to struggle," she said softly. "The garden doesn't reject you. It only reflects you." The air thickened, carrying a faint fragrance of roses and violets. Lila's reflection in a small pond trembled as she gazed into it. Golden light shimmered near Maya's feet, while faint sparks of gold began curling around Lila's shadowed steps. "You're always perfect," Lila whispered, a mixture of envy and frustration. "Everything you touch blooms." Maya knelt, pressing her fingers into the soil. Everything grows from intention, not perfection. The garden seemed to react to her words, the thorns near Lila recoiling, as if giving her a small chance. Yet Lila hesitated. Every word she had spoken in anger the past days had left a mark, and the garden remembered. She felt their weight beneath her feet, the shadows tugging at her heart. "Maybe," Lila began, her voice soft, "maybe I can try differently." The garden paused, a gentle wind sweeping through the trees. Petals floated in the air, brushing against Lila's hand. For the first time, she felt a spark of hope. Maya smiled. Even small steps plant seeds of change. Lila's eyes softened, but pride lingered. The golden glow beneath her feet pulsed faintly, mingling with the shadows. The garden waited, patient as ever, ready to reveal what blooms from choice and what fades into thorns. As the sun began to set, the garden transformed. The soft orange and violet hues reflected in every petal, leaf, and thorn. The once divided path now shimmered with faint glow, hinting at a fragile balance between light and shadow. Maya knelt beneath the rose-covered archway, arranging petals with care. Each word she whispered vibrated through the air. "Bloom with kindness. Stand with courage. Speak with love." Lila watched, her arms at her sides, shadows retreating slowly from her feet. Her heart raced. Every word she had spoken in anger or pride had left marks. But now she could feel the possibility of something different. Lila began hesitantly, her voice shaking. "I want to try." The garden seemed to hold its breath. Thorns twitched, then slowly curled back. A soft golden glow spread from her hands to the earth beneath her feet. Maya looked up and smiled gently. "It's never too late to change, Lila. Every word you speak now plants seeds that can grow into something beautiful." The white twin lowered her gaze to the glowing petals beneath her. For the first time, the reflection she saw was not only of herself but of the person she could become. The thorns at her feet whispered quietly, no longer threatening, but listening, guiding her steps. Maya reached her hand toward Lila. "Walk with me. Let the garden teach you, as it has me." Lila hesitated, then slowly took her sister's hand. As their fingers touched, a surge of light passed between them. The garden shimmered with life. Roses swayed, vines softened, and petals floated into the air like tiny stars. "Words can hurt," Maya said softly, "but they can also heal." Lila nodded. "Then I'll learn. I'll plant wisely." The twins walked together through the rose archway, light and shadow merging beneath their feet. The garden pulsed with renewed energy, carrying the promise of growth, the memory of thorns, and the infinite potential of words. Hibiscus new moon. That evening, the first real harmony began to bloom. The garden whispered softly, almost in approval, as Twin Heart began to understand the power they wielded with every word they spoke. The first light of dawn spilled over the enchanted garden, illuminating every petal, every thorn, every whisper of life. It was as if the garden itself was holding its breath, waiting for something monumental to happen. Maya stood at the center of the rose path, her hands extended slightly above the glowing petals. The flowers bent toward her touch, shimmering faintly as if greeting their caretaker. Lila approached cautiously, the thorn vines at her feet trembling and curling back, unsure whether to resist or obey. She swallowed, uncertainty and hope warring within her. "You've changed," Maya said softly, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone who had tended to life for years. Not completely, but enough for the garden to notice. Lila's lips quivered. I don't want to hurt it anymore." The garden seemed to hum in response. Tiny golden petals swirled around them, suspended in the air as if dancing to a melody only it could hear. The thorns at Lila's feet recoiled further, the dark shadows softening into supple vines, waiting for her next move. Maya knelt, brushing a glowing rose with gentle fingers. "Words are choices, Lila. Every one of them becomes a seed, of beauty or of pain. Today, the garden will decide what grows from you." Lila looked down at her reflection in a small pond nearby. Her shadowed self stared back, lined with the echoes of past mistakes, but a faint golden glow began emanating from her feet. I choose to speak differently," Lila whispered, voice trembling. "To plant flowers instead of thorns." The garden shivered, sensing the sincerity in her words. The sunlight intensified, filtering through petals and leaves, painting a kaleidoscope of colors on the ground. It was the first day the twins stood together as equals, not in power, not in pride, but in understanding. The air hummed with possibility. Petals floated upward, wrapping the sisters in a gentle cascade. The garden leaned toward them, vibrant, alive, and eager to witness the choice being made. Maya smiled, her eyes soft but steady. "The garden listens. And now it's your turn." The sun dipped low, casting a warm amber glow across the enchanted garden. The flowers and vines seemed to hold their breath. Every leaf, every petal, every tendril of thorn vine was attuned to the final choice of the sisters. Lila knelt, hands hovering over the soil. She closed her eyes, whispering words she had never dared to speak aloud before. "I will choose kindness. I will speak with love. I will nurture, not harm." The garden responded instantly. Thorn vines at her feet retracted, curling back into the earth. Golden blossoms burst upward, petals glimmering as if touched by sunlight itself. The air thickened with the scent of roses, lavender, and jasmine, the purest fragrance of renewal. Maya knelt beside her, placing a hand gently on Lila's shoulder. "It listens. Every heart matters. And today, the garden celebrates your choice." A soft wind carried petals around them, lifting into the sky like tiny stars. The thorns that once writhed in anger now leaned gently toward the sisters, harmonious and calm. Even the pond shimmered with golden light, reflecting both their faces, merged with blooms and petals, shadow and gold intertwined. For the first time, the garden was whole, a place where every word, every intention, and every heartbeat coexisted in balance. Lila looked at Maya, tears glistening in her eyes. "Thank you for being patient with me, for showing me what words can do." Maya smiled softly, brushing a stray petal from Lila's hair. "We learn together. The garden is patient, but it never forgets. Remember that." The golden bloom swirled around them as the final light of sunset painted the sky with violet and amber. The twins stood together, one black, one white, bound not by perfection, but by understanding. The knowledge that words are power, and the choice to use them wisely is what makes all the difference. The garden pulsed softly, whispering through leaves, petals, and roots. This is a path of hearts that speak with truth and love. Here beauty and forgiveness reign. As night fell, fireflies emerged, glowing like floating stars. The twin sisters sat side by side beneath the ancient willow, the garden alive and serene around them. Their journey had ended, yet the garden promised that new beginnings were always possible. One word, one seed, one choice at a time. Hibiscus new moon.